Every Monday, one man would sharpen his pencil anew, only by Friday to be fretting over what he'd do come Monday. Funny, but in the city, the simple tend to have shallow, superficial relationships, while the more complex have those far too deep and entangled. If you have the spare time, go figure. If night is the question, then day is the answer. If cold is the problem, then warmth the solution. And if all this be so, then why wouldn't all seesaws have only two ends? See, said life, got you again. I say, Farnsworth, who was that masked chap who just flew through here messing up my mind and new hairpiece? I believe, Your Grace, that it was you-know-who dressed up again as reality trying to fool us for another time. Well, I say, just how long does he think we'll continue to fall for that? I'm sure I couldn't say, my lord. In a related bit of fashion news, it turns out that the reason Captain Irony has always cut such an impressive figure is that he's been carrying around a full case of myopia rolled up in a towel stuffed in his briefs. A human voice said, "Since man is a rational creature, it is the height of intellectual sophistication for one to say that if a man does do wrong, it must simply be involuntarily." And someone nearby asked, did he say the height of intellectual sophistication or folly? But it matters not to those who understood it in the first place. It would be one thing to criticize eating or breathing or resting or sexing, but to complain about any activity much beyond these reveals one to be the world-class simpleton and stay-at-home one is. 5-card news. The one holding the death hand doesn't have to bluff or be sarcastic. An ultra-brief metaphysical history of man. As soon as men discovered that the secret was in them, they began pretending it was someplace else. From a secret cave hidden deep within the mysterious mountains came a cry from a man named Erlo. "Help! Please help me! It turns out that I am Erlo." The mayor told the temporary director of parks, "Hey, plant a couple of trees and then I don't care what, but call it something." From the dictionary of small arms fire, the mind, the safety on the pistol of consciousness. You might care to note that small arms are not the only arms available. And now for a more sophisticated definition. Morality. Hippo tranquilizers for ducks. A lion said to a fox, "You know, if Aesop were alive today, I'd have him for breakfast." And the fox replied, "Too late. I think he's already done it to us." Moral. Out of the jungle, overkill is minimum kill. You lost your place in one page. The difference many experience in the intensity between uncivilized forms of fun and the more acceptable sorts is due to them running off two different atomic clocks. A father told his son, there is a broccoli consciousness and a beef consciousness, a water consciousness and a tea consciousness. And the lad asked, "You mean that each of these objects and elements have their own consciousness?" And the elder replied, "No, I'm talking about your consciousness." The revised short social history of man. Local conditions, still called God by the homies, one day stopped by the hood, and while hanging out on the corner, one of the guys with a bag bottle of Mad Dog slapped him on the back and said, "Yeah, what's the point of living life if you can't laugh about it?" And the big guy jerked away and demanded, "Who the hell told you you could laugh about it?" By a stream, a night so reflected. If man does have an immortal, individual soul, then it should not be so easily touched by the common external world. No, he thought, if any damage come to it, it must surely be by his own thinking about the other realm. For a few, all commentary is toxic. Man's normal perception of the electromagnetic spectrum is limited so as to keep down the shock of the future. The senses are doors and doorstops. According to the legends of one faraway land, the purpose of other people is to give a warrior something specific to endure without comment. Reality, a parade, the mind, an immobile bystander. All of life is transformation. Man's opinion, his stagnation. The ordinary see reality as metaphors for their own invented reality. Such is the origin of, among other things, religion and mythology. A reasonably good verbal rationalization can be offered for any activity in man's civilized world. Not so for the quest. Yet, another distinction. Some useful info for those pretty well sick of living. The more you worry and complain, the faster you'll get out of here. Truth be told, this is not so, but what the hell? Those who worry and complain a lot won't notice anyway. One guy says, after much reading and studying on the matter, I've decided that the closest person to a saint that I've ever met is me, which goes to show you the general condition of things. How to calculate. In the city, good intentions count for however much you want them to. In a real man's life, they're not worth even mentioning. And now over to our sports desk for this meteorological definition. Opportunity, that which to a warrior means nothing. The way some minds work is like a king who, finding his throne uncomfortable, engages in degradative humor regarding the contour and condition of his own bottom. Urban neural safety tip. Asininity runs in gangs. While the ordinary find favor with Wednesday, insofar as it puts them that much closer to the pleasurable notion of TGIY, thank God it's Friday, one man said he thinks of being over the hump as that time at which he can get his mind to shut up for a while. When one man quit calling his dog quit coming. He now plans to try it with himself. Should I go back and reread the ones that I've already screwed up? The way some minds work is like a king who, finding his throne uncomfortable, engages in derogatory humor regarding the condition of his own bottom. Urban neural safety tip. Asininity runs in gangs. Some metro info. On city streets, humor is oftentimes on the way to hostility. The TV commercial began with a voice declaring, "No two people are alike," and the man sitting before his set responded, "I am." And at home, useful reminder. Even when it wasn't on, one man could hear his electric dryer running. Dialogue in sidewalk mode. Since the mind is tied to the body, why won't changing the condition of the body alter the state of the mind? It just won't, that's all. Then why won't altering the state of the mind change the condition of the body? It just won't either. Then what can you change that will affect something else? Why the hell are you asking me all this? A page from the City Hunter's Handbook. Game named is already half bagged. Related theological footnote. Man's notion of an omnipotent God was modeled after his own intellect, in that the mind was the original entity that asked for all things and unto itself delivered all things. Those who seriously criticize the arts are like men who believe that by insulting farts they'll stink less. One man put all of his best thoughts down in a book, but no one read it. So then he just put them all down in his mind and said, okay, now let's see you try it. And as always, any viewer who doesn't get this is perfectly free to contact the I Don't Seem to Get This Society, particularly the chapter closest to where you're now seated. Guy explaining why he quit watching the TV news, talk shows, and interviews. As unbelievable as I know it sounds, I started having moments when I thought the people on there were serious about what they were talking about. Conversation after having just watched a movie. At the end of your life, they run the credits. You mean the kind words they say at your funeral? Kind words? What kind words? Copyright 1994, all applicable international laws enforced. No use, full or partial, may be made without license or specific permission. Man's original blues song. Whoa, ooh, oh, when life's not well, whoa, I don't feel so good myself, whoa. A kid says, it's cute the way the ordinary pretend that they believe they're intelligent. They are pretending, aren't they? Usage tip. Metaphors without modifiers come closest to the mark. In his own mind one day, one man said, I'm actually too good for this planet. And lucky for him, the planet didn't hear him say that. When it came his turn at the annual April Fool's confessional feast, one knight stood and said, I am a reformed nothing. Art and design through definition. The great quiet quest. Religion without the decorative borders. Bards write on scraps. Hacks demand fine linen. As his head grew larger, his eyeglasses got smaller. So how was he to tell? In an attempt to soothe, if not enlighten the lad, his father said to him, let me explain to you how man's invented world works. The lugs on the bottom of your running shoes that make them grip the ground so well are also that which catches on your shorts when you're trying to put them on. The downside to the mind is you can't totally control it. The downside to consciousness is that there is no downside. Another public service announcement brought to you courtesy of the Can You Possibly Dig It Charitable Trust, Hope and Trust Some More. One guy told another guy, you're looking for answers in all the wrong places. Another guy said, but you don't know where I've been looking. The first guy said, I still stand by my statement. A mental health history of man. Back in about 8030, more or less, BC, within 2 weeks of man discovering that he had a psychology, another man came by, stopped, looked at him, and told him he had psychological problems. A little cheer-up tip for all of the fussy, the fastidious, the impatient, the nitpicking, and everyone else who dearly wishes that things would simply go right. The day is coming when no one will have a complaint. Believing that what you do is more important than it is makes it even less important than it actually is. Certain psychiatry, dream interpretation, social criticism, waking dream analysis. Another public health announcement brought to you courtesy of the What's the Use Association. Suicide, a hobby to pursue that requires only you, even if it takes a lifetime. In the world of man, in the realm of the mind, to remove the comment, I have been hurt, is to remove the hurt. The bedrock upon which usual human emotions and relationships are built is the inner running commentary. Report from the wilds Just like humans, animals whine when lying or trying to sell you something. One view of a warrior's ultimate personal entertainment. What works on Monday, won't on Friday. Only those with a doubtful self give any notice to the ideas of self-love and self-worth. Zeus does not announce, well, here I am, nor must a landfill acknowledge its stench. Definition: man, a man in man's clothing. One guy's motto: when in Rome, kill a Roman. Add C, you got to do what's possible. Additional important definitions: the truth, whatever you say it is. No, I don't mean you in the impartial pronoun. I mean you personally. Told you. One of the king's cousins has begun offering a class in how to be warm and charming, but complains that his potential for success is limited in that the only space his grace will allow him is out by the firing squad wall. As the crowded bus rolled along, hour after hour, a man in the back began to sing. My auntie wears panties of flaxen. My uncle sports shirts made of steel. I come from a long line of humans. Pray none of us get behind the wheel. Those by then not already weeping gave him a rousing round of applause. No artist is a true artist till words are a controlled part of his palate. Many people offer to be kinder, more helpful to you as they get older. After all, it's too late for them to help themselves. Okay, I've been warned again by the universal cosmic broadcasting system to remind you that life does not, in any way, shape, or fashion, want you to try and help yourself. Okay. As long as the weak enjoy their weakness, they remain weak. Same with the everyday and ordinary. Call out the wolf patrol and give them swords and armor. But they don't need it. They are who they are already. And this may be the reason that no traces of schools for knights are to be found, and scant records of warriors revealing how they came to be such. Many peoples tell tales of man having slipped from the initial grace of God into his present confused state. But one man offers his own personal version, which has man proclaiming, "Help! I've fallen and I can't quit commenting on it." A father told his brood, everyone needs a hero. Okay, now think of one. Got it? Okay, now forget it and push on with your own family studies. If you really need someone to look up to, just use that unused area higher up in your own brain. Man's usual notions regarding things metaphysical are like an airplane that never comes in for a landing. And in spite of no popular demand whatsoever, we revise an item from earlier in the week. Of what benefit is a rewrite to a hack mind? A certain man paused to ponder. Why would a plane that had once escaped the jungle ever return? Then remembered the finite sphericalness of the planet. Affairs zoological, the setting, the city. Pigeons who quit flying headfirst into buildings oftentimes believe they've engaged in some form of self-improvement. One man says he's about come to this point, that he believes there are two kinds of knowledge, real knowledge and weenie knowledge, and that weenie knowledge is the kind available to most people. A maybe hint. One way to tell that a man knows what he's doing is that he doesn't care what anyone else is doing. One man began signing all of his correspondence as me and the staff. hoping that someone would call his bluff. Dogs have fleas, flowers have bees, and men have each other. And of course, themselves primarily. A woman on a boat looked away and thought, as long as I have my mind, I'll never be alone. No art is ugly till you dislike it. Then you share in its ugliness. Instead of a conventional prayer, one man began each morning by saying, "Oh Lord, don't let it be my day in the barrel." See, we have many people here from Alaska. Chill out. A man sat and pondered the following. Well, drugs can lower your level of consciousness, and so can anger, let's see, and so can illness, and so can disappointment and self-pity. But hey, so can just thinking. Geez, I'm not so glad I thought of that. That was all a quote. A visitor to Earth went back home. When a visitor to Earth went back home, told a friend, "You won't believe how hard up people down there are for something to do. They write and read biographies of other people." One man says he's now begun to look upon civilization as the index to the next volume of man. An ad placed in the psychological personals column of the local paper finds one man describing himself as a fixer-upper project. Thought, the noise life makes as it travels through man. One man says he's beginning to believe that by commenting on the pain in other people's lives, he's helping contribute to it. Where the ordinary see shadows, the more conscious perceive objects. Where the ordinary see metaphors, the more conscious eyeball reality. Metaphors live in the woods. Reality is the woods. Safety check. If you can't argue about it, it ain't ordinary knowledge. One man thought, is the mind but a catalyst to consciousness? More neural, come rhetorical, by way of definition, news. Cliches, the heartbeat of civilization. As a time-saving measure on this one planet, rather than waiting to see specifically what disruptive mischief they might eventually get into, the city fathers simply had slain any child who showed any signs of originality. The real mystical guts of certain well-known myths would be, they can crucify a locality, but life is continual resurrection. The legend of the people who never whined. There is no such legend. Another example of how street-level eyes, even the best of them, still fail to see. There is something faster than the speed of light, the human mind. How else was it able to measure it? How it goes. Those of the quest are given to the quest. And that's the way it goes. Known to some as justice, and by many hated for the same reason. Our forefathers said, all that is from the gods is good. You should update it to say, all that is filled with even greater promise. To fully enjoy the parade that is life, you've got to see over everyone else's head. Being more aware should make you more enthused about being more aware, or else you're not actually more aware. That's what I hate about proof, responds one man. It proves so much. One man asked himself, there are so many different conditions of the mind, how can there be just one method of attempting to control it? Stillness. There is the stillness of the wind, there is the stillness of the waves, then there is just plain stillness. As the man left the hospital after intensive, intricate treatments and saw his car there to pick him up, being now totally rebuilt and refurbished after the horrendous wreck that had put him there, he thought, no matter the many stupid, astounding, and self-threatening acts man is capable of, he is still no less than a miracle worker. Animals cannot be heroic. Only man. Only creatures who can speak and sing. A bit of old business, based on whatever distraction we were remiss, life directed us to point out something back on April Fool's Day when we were taping and something came up. It was to remind you of what a sense of humor life has. And what it directed us to use as the example was here in the United States, very recently, in a nice, quiet, upper middle class, respectable town, the assistant chief of police, who had been there for many years, very well respected, pillar of the community, married to the same woman for, I'm just giving you the rough, as I recall the details, I'm close, the same woman for 35 years, nice family, that one of his younger children at school one day was feeling bad, and the teacher asked what was wrong, and for some reason, and the child didn't know, and the teacher asked something about, well, is there any chance you're being abused? It turns out, according to the teacher, she comes back to the chief of police and says that now one of his girl children is reporting that he has been sexually abusing her. So they call in the assistant chief. Turns out that he is, by his own account, what is referred to as a fundamentalist religious person in the Western sense. And they call him in to speak to him, and they, at the same time, they bring in the chief of police, they bring in a psychologist who specializes in such things, and they bring in his pastor of his church. And they confront him, they say that it seems as though one of his daughters says that he has been sexually abusing her, or has in the past. That's why she was feeling bad yesterday in school. And the assistant chief says, well, I brought my children up to always tell the truth, and I can't imagine them lying, so there must be some basis for it. The psychologist then points out that, this is he or she, whoever it was, had obviously been keeping up to date, said that was a fairly well-known phenomenon now, if you were up to date and current as he or she was, is known as some sort of subconscious masking, that people do things and they're so horrendous that they block it out, and it takes something to jog their memory. And so the assistant chief says, well, I can argue with that. So it goes on a few more days, and it seems as though the more they ask, and they tell this man, the minister says, well, I've never known him to lie, and if you think anything in your mind, then God put it there, and he would not take a good Christian, I'll say Christian, and give him an erroneous idea. And so do you have any idea that you may have done that kind of despicable sexual abuse with your daughter? And they remind him that she said several days ago that, yeah, he did. And so he says, well, I guess I did. And the psychologist points out, well, now we're getting somewhere, because you initially realized, I bet you thought you hadn't. And he went, well, yeah, to tell you the truth, But you understand that that is the classic. Now we recognize it. Thank God we're up to date. But we recognize that now as being the classic syndrome, that the first thing when you hear about it, if you've done it, is you think, well, I never did do that. And him being the honest sort he was, he thinks, well, you've got me again. I don't know what to say. Then supposedly after a few more days, the chief of police joins in. And he's been keeping up to date with other things, other weird activities going on around the country. And he says, well, this sort of activity, so I hear, is oftentimes related to satanic practices. And they said that the assistant chief kind of went, like, well, I don't know. And the chief said, well, many times it is so secretive and it is so far removed from the mainstream that those involved with it, they just don't know what to say. They're just struck dumb and sometimes will deny it. And they said that the assistant chief, still being the upstanding citizen, the honest Christian and law-abider that he was, went, well, by God, I'm fitting right into the mold of it, because I couldn't remember it. It seems as though after a period of time, it's like after several weeks, in this community that up until then had been rather quiet, they then had that the chief had called out, they had the state have helped furnish helicopters, and they were now buzzing over, deserted areas and the day and night looking for, some sign of satanic practices, and they're going day and night in people's backyards. They're now questioning other children, and somebody finally got around to asking his daughter again something about the sexual abuse, and it seemed like she misunderstood what they asked. So by then it made the national press. He was disgraced. His family was coming apart. The psychologist was already writing papers and was being invited to places. The chief of police was now considered, he was already being considered one of the up-and-coming experts in satanic practices leading to child abuse. They said that the assistant chief said that at the time he was feeling much better than that. He got it all out of his system and confessed until they decided that no, it happened. And he said he felt equally as good after that. And so everything supposedly, as far as possible, went back to normal, like it was before all this happened. But that was anyway. Life, I assume I remembered it all because I was supposed to have told you that back on April Fool, because Life wanted to remind you that it has a sense of humor. Somewhat ex parte, we might also take note, besides those specifics, of the kind of continuing thing comes to mind is, well, there's one in here tonight about a kid, I guess is what reminded us all, of a kid that said, isn't it cute how ordinary people will pretend like they think that they're smart and intelligent? And he said, they are pretending, aren't they? The anti-abortionists today, taking on the quite serious mantle of publicly speaking out to announce that life is really a great thing. And although I wasn't told this directly, I just, knowing life as I do, I feel as though life would like for me to express its extreme gratitude that someone would point out what a neat, well, I think one of their slogans is life, what a great thing, or what a great choice and a great thing. And I just know that life, knowing its sense of humor, is that life is really touched. But still, in all fairness, we should be reminded, as we have before, that life also periodically cautions some of you to remember that no matter where you live, that it's always almost too easy to laugh at local conditions. So. How about a little more something practical that I threatened? It was an item a while back that said a knight's secret strategy would be that if you're going out to kill a dragon, kill two at a time. This is connected to what we were talking about last time, of this continuing under all the different names of mystical attempts, and I was trying to get you to consider that no matter what it's called, the practice itself That can be called everything from trying to get one's own personal mind in direct union with the great cosmic mind, or with God, with the divine reality, etc. But they all will admit under one way or the other, or they're all saying. They just don't put it in the terms that would sound as though it is an active form of meditation and etc. But they're all saying we have got to calm the mind before this is possible. Now, in religions such as Christianity, there is no mainstream place for meditation. In fact, some of the conservative sides of the stream of the mainstream even find some fault with meditation. That seems to be some sort of Eastern non-Christian questionable activity. And so they say things like, if you look at the Ten Commandments, if you get past the childish level, that is the simplistic level of being behavior, it's not about behavior unless you're just a child, which many grown people still are children, but that's to say, don't put your finger in the food, don't put your finger in your neighbor's wife, and that kind of thing. If you're still that simple, but what it's about is internal. If you have a more complex view of it, it's not about simply behavior. The Ten Commandments, back to where I was, for instance, is really about calming the mind. Calming that internally, which seems to lead to behavior that is disruptive, that is non-Christian. So all religions, whether they call it that or not, are engaged in, tacitly, promoting the practice of trying to calm the mind. Just to remind you that this is connected. The idea, as I present it, that a real person, a more alert person, trying in spite of what life says to actually help themselves. Now, life warned you. If you're going out to kill a dragon, kill two at a time. Let me give it to you specifically. How this works, because it's based upon the binary aspect, the polarized aspect of everything that seems to be normal, rational, sequential, reasonable in a three-dimensional world. Which, all that may be true, but that is not enough to ever change. Let's take something very specifically. You take what would appear to be the attempt to go from one place to another, to make some change, and there is always some sort of whiplash to it. There's always some kind of backlash to it. There's always some price to apparently pay. An easy one. Here's one everyone knows. What if a man smoked and he decided, I'll quit smoking? Everyone knows that from common wisdom to medical science will substantiate this, that it is a certainty. It is just a fait accompli that if you quit smoking, you're going to gain weight. And there's medical reason, not just conventional reason. The medical reason having to do with the appetite suppressing qualities of nicotine and etc. And even the smoke and its irritation and the filling up of one's stomach, that if you quit smoking, everybody knows you're going to gain weight. It's just a matter of how much. A knight, if he was smoking and decided to quit smoking, he would do two things at once. He wouldn't go out and just kill smoking. That won't do. I mean, it'll do. We're not talking about ordinary people, of course. An ordinary person wants to go quit smoking, so be it. Or if they don't smoke and decide, what I need is take up smoking. It doesn't matter. But if you're trying to actually do something of an extraordinary nature, not simply change behavior, you would kill two dragons at once. And you'd have to decide beforehand. To wit, put it directly, this knight of mine I made up, he decides he'll quit smoking. He simultaneously decides, I'll quit smoking, of course, now, and I'll immediately start to lose weight. And that's it. It's not a discussion. It's not anything to go look in a book and see, well, is that ever possible? Does it happen? You do not go out, even at the most practical, the most mundane level, and attempt to kill one dragon. You won't accomplish anything. One more time, if you're a child, and if that's all you're involved with, if that's the extent of your hobby is playing with behavior, you may quit smoking. And you may quit, spitting up blood. Tra-la-la-la-la, 3 cheers to you. If you're trying to do something extraordinary, not affect behavior, not change behavior, that's child's play. If you're going to do it, you cannot go out. If you decide, I'm going out and slay a dragon, I'm going out and do something that would be beneficial to me, something that would be heroic, something that would obviously contribute to my pursuit of the quest. You can't go out and kill one dragon. Whichever dragon you pick out, he's got an assistant. He's got a twin, an evil twin. You have got to do it beforehand. If you're going out to kill a dragon, you just have to decide your strategy is 2 at a time. Always 2 at a time. And you don't have to look. All you got to look is what other people would say is either, they describe it in various ways, but it's always, well, if you do that, so-and-so will happen. The easy one is they just say, well, hey, you can't do it. But if you insist, well, by God, I'm going to try. They say, well, you can, but you're going to swell up like a blimp. I mean, if you quit smoking, I mean, you're all right. Look at you, 5 pounds overweight now. If you quit smoking, you're going to look like, the Macy's parade is left over from Thanksgiving. The piano and I are going to laughingly assume that you understand that there is something, that you're hearing something beyond literal, physical attempts to change one's vices, behavior. It is nonetheless true that whatever you are attempting to change, and that is just a great example because it is not only conventional wisdom, that is that you'll gain weight if you're a smoker and you quit. You will gain weight, no doubt about it. It's just a matter of how much, and it is even medical explicable. It is a known fact. There is a medical, physical reason that you simply will, because it is as though you have been taking a form of non-prescription appetite depressant for all these years, and it's suddenly gone if you just quit. And everybody knows that the first thing you do, you're just starving. Just eat. A known fact. So what? If you're going out and kill that dragon, you got to decide beforehand, I'm going to kill 2. No discussion, no thinking about all this. You already know that. If you got just walking around 10th grade knowledge, you know all that. So you think, all right, let's see. What'll I do? I know what. I'm going to quit smoking and lose weight. Not not do a little of this and a little of that. 2. I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to quit smoking tomorrow and start losing weight. Same time. It's a 2-for-1 deal. It's not that I'll get in there and see if it'll work. It has to work. Now, beyond the physical, simplistic change of behavior, such as that, which, by the way, curiously enough, if somebody did that, even an ordinary person, took that approach, it would have extraordinary results. Probably more than they'd care for. They'd probably find it spooky. No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't like to get into it. But beyond that, if you try and change anything in the mind, in the noise that life makes as it passes through men, thought. If you try and change that, which with ordinary people passes as self-improvement, that is, those insightful New Age pigeons downtown who have quit flying headfirst into buildings, and now, no doubt, in their little minds, in their little brains, which we won't compare to any of those that may be kin or friends to us, those pigeons who have quit flying headfirst into buildings have no doubt that they have engaged in some form of self-improvement. Anytime that you try and change what you think, anytime, I know that got a little, did I stretch it too far? Nope, thank you. Ordinary people, be they religious, New Age, would-be drugstore mystics, let's say that they're up to the point they go, screw all this stuff about smoking, all that. Get down to the good stuff about changing the way you think and calming the mind. I'm up to that point. I've been reading books all my life. I'm up to that point. What I want is know how to get somewhere. I keep trying to calm my mind. I have for years tried to remember the name of Buddha with every breath. I did that for 10 years. I drove nothing. Then I discovered this other group. And then I started trying to, drop the idea of a Buddha and that because that distracts you. Just try and objectively remember yourself. I tried that for 20 years. By the way, I didn't pull it out, but right there toward the end, did anybody notice? I think I read him out loud. I saw it. It said one guy decided there are so many different conditions of the mind. How can there be just one method of attempting to control it? I guess I imagined I read that one. So this person says, well, just tell me how. Let's get to the real stuff. I just did. But ordinary people, if they had, no matter what the guise was, that they are attempting to either engage in some immobile state or practice of meditation, sitting, so they're engaged in continual prayer, prayer combined with fasting, prayer combined with anything, whatever their practice is. If you go out and you look at it as, I'm trying to do whatever it is, I'm trying to control my appetites in the full carnal sense of the term, or I'm trying to calm my mind, I'm trying to focus my attention on the other world, whatever it is. They're attempting to kill a dragon. But if you attempt to kill one, nothing happens. Because of the nature of the noise life makes as it goes through that great Lincoln Tunnel known as you. Man, brain. Everything else is the pigeons believing that they were involved with self-improvement. That is, if you attempt to do one thing, now we're gone from I'm going to quit smoking, let's go to I'm going to quit hating Canadians. I don't know why I said that. All right, Cubans. You're going to start that. Upholsterers. Oh, then we're going to. I'm going to quit hating people of another nationality. Whatever it is, you understand. That it appears to be something much more subtle, much more refined, much more spiritual, much more metaphysical. Then I'll quit smoking. I am going to change what I am internally. Now, you can try it, but all you're going to do is swell up like a blimp. Yes, I quit despising people who are religious. Let's say, I'll make it easy. Of a different religion. You might do your own, but now. I stopped it. Every now and then maybe I try to get somebody else's secondhand smoke. But I have literally, I've quit buying. I no longer buy cigarettes. That is, I no longer accept. Every time that I can catch myself having a nasty thought about somebody else's religion, I go, now you stop that, you old dumb pigeon. No, you are either trying to smoke or fly against a building again. You can say, yeah, I'm working on it. But the man doesn't notice, my God, you put on 70 ungodly, unsightly pounds. Because if you try and kill one dragon, you'll swell up. You got to kill two. What this gets down to pragmatically is that any attempt to slay one dragon is ultimately remedial action. It is self-improvement. It is fix-up time passing as self-improvement. And you cannot look at self-improvement, and now meaning in the full meta-gnostic and metaphysical sense, the expansion of one's consciousness. You cannot expand it, you cannot improve it through repairs. If you could, we'd all be fixed up. You might look like a house that part of a drunken crew from Sears came and patched up your roof with unmatched tar paper, and you might look a bit ungainly, but you can say, well, I'm fixed up. I don't leak as bad as I used to. I don't smoke as much as I used to. Aren't I a little bit better than I used to be? You can't call that a change. That kind of fix-up is what happens when you go out to shoot one dragon. That's what happens when you try and deal with the mind that, all right, now there's what I'll change, or there's the first place I'll work. Well, now that's something without any doubt. Every religion, I don't care how different they seem on the surface, Every religion I've ever read about says you cannot think like that. So now I got somewhere. Where we left last time, as you recall, I was pointing out that it is extremely tempting, would be for someone who understood this and was talking about it, to come up with a new term, with a new description. No matter how slight was the change, because it doesn't have to be great. There's not that big a change if you look at it as being a sequential history of going from remembering the name of Vishnu to remembering the name of Buddha to remembering the name of Jesus to remembering yourself. But each little change for its time and place is apparently a step forward, that we're now getting better tools with which to work. Of course, people said that who did not know the item I pointed out, that it was approximately, more or less, it was 8030 BC when men first discovered that they had an individual psychology, and within 2 weeks, somebody came by and looked at him and went, "You got psychological problems." That was the beginning. To believe that you can repair those problems will keep you on the bus. It will keep you swelling up. The less you smoke, the more weight you put on. You'll never understand the nature of what a seesaw is. You'll keep complaining. You'll keep trying to come up with some metaphysical rationalization why there's an end to the seesaw over here that you're not on. Or get really sharp, try to come up with some metaphysical explanation of why that other end that goes up when you go down and vice versa is actually an illusion. It doesn't happen. It is like a phantom dragon. It is like the evil twin of those great chivalrous soap operas that always pops up. If you try and slay one dragon, you've done nothing. It'll give you a hobby. You'll stay there forever. You've got to kill two. Is anyone getting, by now, a little more metaphorical with this? To understand that there is nothing to be changed about one's mind. There's nothing to be repaired. Not in some silly sense, not in some non-sequitorial sense. It literally cannot be done. It is a seesaw. You cannot kill one dragon. You can't even do it any damage. Unless you call you swelling up when you quit smoking that you're doing the dragon damage. That's a pretty far reach. You got to imagine, well, at least I'm making the dragon mad because he probably thinks I'm so fat now that he can't stand to look at me. So at least I'm irritating him. I guess in desperation, any old explanation in a storm, as us sailors used to say. Well, as defrocked chaplains on boats used to say, is any old port in a storm. If any of you heard any of that, then can you understand why that there is no explanation for anything that man does outside, beyond the bio survival level? There is no rationale for what he did. There is no criticism. There's no rational criticism for what he does. There is no rational criticism for criticizing what he does. There is no support for what he did. Unless you find something absolutely astounding, inexplicably metaphysical about a frigging seesaw. Now, if you do, you're in a whole other ball game of metaphysics. You're on a great mystical quest that you can find in a playground. To try and affect the mind, to try and affect consciousness on the basis of fixing it, which is what any attack on man is, not physical, on the civilized, the mental world of man. Any attack, any critique, any fault finding is the attempt to attack a dragon. And the reason I laid on it, to remind you, even if you attack that son of a gun, even if you quit smoking, you're going to swell up like a blimp unless you go after both of them. And if you go after both of them, you haven't really fixed up anything. Ordinary people believe they want to fix up where they live, psychologically. if you know what you're doing, what you want to do is leave it. And you can't leave it if you're going to fix it up. I can drag the metaphor out forever. You can think, which ordinary people, that's what it amounts to, is like, oh, I got to leave this house. I'm sick of it. But, I got to fix it up before I go, or I'll never sell it. Nobody else will take it off my hands. I mean, you can't just, here it is. Look at this reputable shape I am in. It's me, right? Okay. I can't just walk away from this. Look at all the horrible psychological baggage. Look at all the people I've offended that came in my home. Look at how my family, everyone has been offended by the way I've let my house run down, the way it smells, the tacky furniture I have. Shoot, don't tell me I want to leave, but I got to do something. I can't just walk away from it. Why are so many of all these great mystical philosophies and theories and et cetera known as some kind of quest, some kind of journey, some guy going off, a knight, a prophet goes off in the wilderness? Why is all that? Especially if you think about it, that if the secret and the great quest is in them, why do all these famous historical figures always going off somewhere, sending off other people? Well, it has to be metaphorical. Really? Could be, might not be. Back to my question, why are they all about not staying here where we have the Pope, where we have a good basic religion, where we have a good school of philosophy? It's always, get thee out of here. Go off on a quest. Go somewhere. It's abandon the place.